You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, and you're not. Believe it or not, I'm actually going to start with the NFL. No, it's not going to be the Devontae Adams news. Oh my God, they broke off extension talks. That's really not news. We're not at an Aaron Rodgers tipping point with that. Who cares if they broke off extension talks? If there were further developments, yeah, that's news. But at this very moment, it's really not that important. What is important is the NFL laying the hammer down when it comes to players getting the coronavirus vaccine. Just to boil it down to the ground, the NFL said point blank it wouldn't add a 19th week to the season. If Team A and Team B are set to go at it and Team A has a COVID outbreak among its unvaccinated players, the NFL will try to reschedule that game, but if they can't, that's a forfeit. Team B wins. Also, in that hypothetical, players on both sides wouldn't be paid for the canceled game. So the NFL is drawing a line in the sand here. They're saying, get vaccinated. Protect yourself. They tried to do it with removing the daily testing, removing the isolation periods, the gathering restrictions among vaccinated people. That isn't getting the job done, so the NFL is going further. This is the hardest line stance that we've seen a professional sports league take. And you know what? I applaud Roger Goodell for doing this. This is the right decision. Will it actually motivate more people to get vaccinated? Only time will tell, but it should. I'm sure the teams are going to say, hey, wait a minute. We don't want to lose games over this. All you holdouts, get vaccinated now or we're going to look for replacements. What's really ticked me off about this is seeing the reaction of guys like DeAndre Hopkins and Jalen Ramsey. They hate this. They're really upset about this. They don't want to be pressured into taking the vaccine. They don't think the vaccine works because they're medical experts, right? Okay, look, it's time to go down this rabbit hole. I didn't want to have to do this, but no, I have to go down this rabbit hole. For the love of all things pure and holy, if you haven't gotten the vaccine yet, you, my friend, are an idiot. There's no other word for it. You're just a stupid person. I don't know what more proof you need that the vaccines work. The vaccines are excellent at preventing you from getting seriously sick from the coronavirus. Are there major side effects? In very rare cases, yes. But there are side effects with literally every medication on the market. Here's what happened to me when I got the vaccine. I got the vaccine in February and March. I got Pfizer. My first shot, I felt kind of fatigued. I was a little out of it, but I recovered in a day. The second shot, I had to take a Tylenol. That's it. That's all that happened to me. What, are you afraid to take the vaccine? You don't know what it's going to do to your body? I took it. I guess I'm braver than some NFL players. I guess I'm more of a man than some NFL players. I guess my grandmother, who's in her 80s, is tougher than these NFL players. The NFL is doing the right thing here. They're realizing that taking the vaccine isn't a personal choice issue. It's a public health issue. You do not have a choice in keeping the people around you safe. That is something that you need to do. You can't choose whether or not to do that. Would you show up to training camp with a loaded gun? Let me ask you that. Would you store that gun improperly? Would you make it so anyone could get their hands on it? Same thing here. You're playing with fire. You can get a lot of people sick if you don't get vaccinated. With the Delta variant circulating now, the vast majority of cases of the coronavirus in this country are from unvaccinated people. There have been stories of people on their deathbeds asking for the coronavirus vaccine. It's too late. You remember when you were younger, your mom would say, "Stop doing that or else I'm going to take away your favorite toy." You keep doing it, your mom takes away the toy, and then you say you'll stop? No, it doesn't work like that. Sorry, you're not getting your toy back anytime soon. Same thing here. You made the choice to be an idiot? Say hi to my grandfather for me once you cross those pearly gates. In the early stages of this pandemic, we were begging for medicine to stop this. Whether it was medicines that would treat the symptoms or a vaccine. Don't you remember that? Don't you remember the hell that we went through last year? There are people in other countries begging for our vaccines. We have the federal government, state government, local government begging people to take the vaccine. They're turning it down. There are people in other countries that would literally kill for these life-saving shots. And idiots in this country, like DeAndre Hopkins and Jalen Ramsey, are saying, "No, I don't want to put my body on the line like that. These life-saving vaccines that the scientific community has deemed safe, no, I know better." These are freaking football players. The vast majority of these guys aren't exactly Mensa members. Wouldn't you want to defer to the scientific community? To people whose literal job it is to save lives? Oh no, I saw something on social media that this guy who I know, his friend's cousin's nephew's uncle's brother's second roommate, developed a really bad reaction after getting the vaccine. I can't take it. If you need me to explain why that's stupid, you're part of the problem. You're trusting unverified sources on Facebook and Twitter as opposed to scientific consensus. If this truly was just affecting you, okay. Unfortunately, you have a right to be stupid. But again, it's not just affecting you. DeAndre Hopkins and Jalen Ramsey are role models. There are little kids who look up to these guys. DeAndre Hopkins is the best player on the Cardinals. There are a lot of little kids that live in Arizona that probably have DeAndre Hopkins jerseys. Or he's their favorite player. By sowing this distrust, you are impacting their lives. When they turn 12 years old, they can get the Pfizer vaccine. But wait a minute, my role model is saying not to get it. Don't you realize the responsibility that you have as a role model for kids? It's one thing if you're going to go out late at night, drink a little too much, and then get arrested for a DUI or a DWI. Okay, you made a stupid decision. Nobody's perfect. It's still not a good thing, but it could be worse. This actively promoting distrust of scientific consensus? DeAndre Hopkins should be ashamed of himself. Jalen Ramsey should be ashamed of himself. You have these athletes declining to say whether they've been vaccinated or not. They're calling it a personal choice. Don't you realize the awesome platform that you have? Wait a minute. You'll use that platform to promote Black Lives Matter. You won't use it to promote a vaccine that could save lives of people of all skin colors? That's an issue. You can't pick and choose. Once you say you want to be active in social justice, you've got to use that megaphone fully. You're saying that you have this awesome reach? I can get to millions of people like that and they'll listen to me? I'm not saying that police brutality isn't an issue. I'm not saying that at its core, Black Lives Matter is bad. What I'm saying is, these athletes bent over backwards to be able to use their platforms in such a way as to promote the Black Lives Matter movement. Now when it's something infinitely more important, they're going into their clamshells. The hypocrisy is real. If I was the owner of a sports team, I'd get the faces of my team to do a PSA for people to get the COVID vaccine. With all due respect to Dave Choksi, the health commissioner of New York City, a message from him isn't going to be as effective as a message from a guy like Aaron Judge or Pete Alonso or Kevin Durant or Julius Randle. Having signs all over the place isn't enough. I want to see these athletes, the faces of the franchise, going out and saying, get vaccinated. I want to see pictures of them getting the shot. I want to see them making a positive difference, as opposed to spewing this nonsense. The worst thing that we've done as a country is make this vaccine a personal choice issue. It's not. It's a public health issue. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. I understand the questions that you may have about the vaccine. Why should I take something that was developed so quickly? Why should I take something that's only been authorized on an emergency basis? How can you say it's effective when people who have been vaccinated are still testing positive for the coronavirus? Your questions are valid, and it's a good thing to be asking questions. A little healthy skepticism is good. You shouldn't take anything at face value. You should dig into it a little bit more. The thing is, though, I can't answer those questions. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm a sports talk show host. So my advice to you, if you have those questions, would be to schedule a consult with your doctor. I can promise you this, even if you're not sick, your doctor would love to talk to you if you're on the fence about getting the COVID vaccine. He'd love to convince you to get it. It's one thing to have questions. It's another thing to not seek out and accept the answers to those questions. These aren't great philosophical questions that you have, like what's the meaning of life? Is there a one true religion? No. The questions that you have about the coronavirus are questions that can be answered empirically. All in all, if you haven't gotten the vaccine yet, just get it. If you want a specific vaccine, you want Pfizer, you want Moderna, you want Johnson & Johnson, that's fine. Okay, just get one of them. The NFL is doing the right thing here. They realize the role that they have in the public conscience in this country. They're taking a pro-vaccine stance. That's the right thing to do. I'll say this, Roger Goodell has handled this pandemic perfectly. Say what you want about Roger Goodell, and he's not perfect. There's no question about that. But through his handling of this pandemic, he's turned into one of the best commissioners in NFL history. And DeAndre Hopkins and Jalen Ramsey and people like them who have this immense platform but use it to disseminate lies are disgusting human beings. That may seem harsh, but desperate times call for desperate measures. With cases going back up, with the Delta variant wreaking havoc among the unvaccinated, this isn't the time to sugarcoat things. I've got to go hard in the paint. The reality is DeAndre Hopkins and Jalen Ramsey are disgusting human beings. They should be ashamed of themselves. And I lost all respect for them. Alright, now I'll give you some MLB Valk talk. And the Tampa Bay Rays made a couple big trades. They acquired Nelson Cruz and Calvin Fletcher from the Twins in exchange for Joe Ryan and Drew Strotman. They then traded Rich Hill to the Mets for Tommy Hunter and Matt Dyer. There's a lot to unpack here. Let's start with the Cruz trade. An absolutely fantastic move by the Rays. If you were to write down on a piece of paper what the Tampa Bay Rays needed, it would have looked a lot like Nelson Cruz. The Rays have gotten no production from their DHs this year. Rays DHs this year are 13th in batting average. They're hitting a combined .219. They've only hit 13 home runs. That's 12th in baseball. If you like OPS, the Rays are 13th when it comes to their DHs in OPS. Combined, they have a .694 OPS. The Rays are also a young-ish team. Brandon Lau, Randy Arozarena, Austin Meadows, Wander Franco, Taylor Walls, Shane McClanahan, Josh Fleming. They could use a strong veteran presence like Cruz. Even though he's 41 years old, this guy can still play. He's still one of the most feared sluggers in baseball. He was an all-star this year. He's hitting .294 with 19 homers and 50 RBIs. The Twins needed to trade Cruz. They got a pretty good haul for him. They got a couple pretty good pitching prospects. But before I get into that, I want to commend the Rays for something. Actually spending money. Hey, Stu Sternberg, see what happens when you actually spend some money? You can get all-stars, as opposed to having to trade them away. This Rays lineup just got a lot scarier. You put Cruz in a lineup with guys like Lau, Austin Meadows, Arozarena, and Mike Zunino. That's one of the best power lineups in all of baseball. Now the Twins got a couple good prospects, and it's the right decision to trade Cruz. There's no question about that. They're having an absolutely terrible season. They're 41-56. They have no chance of making the playoffs, obviously. So trade Cruz, a pending free agent. I have no problem with that. And they didn't just give him away. Joe Ryan is a really good strikeout pitcher. He has a really good fastball, locates it really well, likes to pitch up in the zone. Very aggressive pitcher. He's got to develop his secondary pitches more. He has a decent changeup, an okay-ish slider, and to put it bluntly, a bad curveball. It's possible that Ryan turns into a reliever down the line, but he could start. I think the smart money is on him turning into a reliever in the majors, but he certainly has the potential to turn into a starter. As for Strotman, it's kind of tough to get a firm handle on him. He had Tommy John surgery in 2018. Only pitched in 9 games in 2019. Didn't pitch at all in 2020. But he's a power pitcher. Has a good fastball, strong slider, strong cutter. He's got to work on his control. He's got to stay healthy, which, to his credit, he's done so far this year. It wouldn't surprise me if Strotman turned into a good starter. I'll actually say this. I have more faith in Strotman as a starter than I do Ryan as a starter. But Ryan has the higher ceiling because he can be a really good reliever. Calvin Forcher, you don't need to know anything about. He's a schmagegi. So look, the Rays obviously win this trade. This will help their playoff push a lot. I didn't think that I'd be seeing Nelson Cruz from Tuesday to Thursday, but here we are. But for the Rays to then turn around and trade Rich Hill is kind of surprising to me. I understand that Hill's stuff has fallen off recently since the crackdown on the sticky stuff. Since June 12th, he has a 5.4 ERA. He's 1-2 in those 7 starts. Before that, Hill was dealing. He was 5-2 with a 3.05 ERA. Overall, he's 6-4 with a 3.87 ERA. The sticky stuff crackdown really hurt a guy like Hill because he relies on finesse. He relies on location. He's not going to overpower you. So to change what he can and can't do mid-season, yeah, that's going to be really tough for him. But you know what? The Mets are doing good by taking a chance on him. I mean, they're buying low. Tommy Hunter's hurt right now, and Matt Dyer's a schmagegi. The Mets need starters. Realize, DeGrom's hurt right now, Peterson's hurt right now, Lucchesi's hurt right now, Carrasco's hurt right now. So are guys like Noah Syndergaard and Jordan Yamamoto. You can't rely on just Marcus Stroman, Taijuan Walker, and Tyler McGill. You've got to add some rotation depth there. I've seen some Mets fans wondering what they're going to do with the rotation once everyone comes back. You cross that bridge when you get there. You can never have too much pitching. This is a great trade for the Mets. They easily win it. It makes a ton of sense. If nothing else, Hill gives the Mets an innings eater. So that way the Mets can get into their bullpen that's actually pretty good, except for Edwin Diaz and Seth Lugo. Moving on now to the Cleveland Indians deciding on a new team name for next year and beyond. We knew that the Indians would cease to exist after this year. We just didn't know what they were going to call themselves. Would they be the Cleveland Naps again? Would they be the Cleveland Spiders again? Would they be the Cleveland Rocks? My personal choice. We could change the Colorado Rockies name. No, they went with the Cleveland Guardians. Yeah, I don't like that name either. I guess it's not terrible. It's just kind of hard to get used to. You may be asking yourself where they got Guardians from. Evidently, and I've been to Cleveland, okay? I've been there many times. I didn't know this. If you're a resident of Cleveland, maybe you knew this. but I didn't. There are 8 sculptures along a bridge in Cleveland called the Hope Memorial Bridge. Those sculptures are called the Guardians of Traffic. To give you a sense of where the Hope Memorial Bridge is, it crosses the Cuyahoga River. I mean, just to be clear, you're naming your baseball team after 8 statues that thousands of people drive by every day and don't pay any attention to. That doesn't exactly strike fear into me. I mean, the one thing that I kind of like is they actually kept part of the Indians' name. What are the last 5 letters in Indians? D-I-A-N-S. What are the last 5 letters in Guardians? D-I-A-N-S. I don't like the logo, though. I don't understand what those white things are protruding from the G. I know there's a baseball there, obviously, but what are those tail fins doing there? That makes no sense. It actually looks like something out of a Native American headdress. Look, I'll say this. 20 to 30 years from now, when little kids are growing up in Cleveland, they won't think of this name as weird. This isn't the Columbus Blue Jackets. This isn't the Utah Jazz. It's not terrible. It's not great. It wouldn't have been my first choice. I'd love to know how many people that live in Cleveland actually knew about the Guardians of Traffic. Is that a well-known thing in Cleveland? Like, seriously, I've been to Cleveland many times. I like Cleveland. It's a nice city. But I didn't know anything about the Guardians of Traffic. The Indians renamed their team after a bridge. Think about that. That would be the equivalent of a New York team renaming themselves as the New York Frogsnecks, or the New York Whitestones, or the New York Verrazanos, the New York Tappan Z's. I don't mind that they wanted to move on from Indians. I've said this before. I'm not the aggrieved party, so it's unfair for me to say whether the name should be changed or whether the name shouldn't be changed. If it really offended a lot of people, then yeah, change the name. I don't mind that. But I wanted the Cleveland Rocks, R-O-X. Rename the Colorado Rockies something. How about the Colorado Pikes, like Pikes Peak? That wouldn't be bad. The Colorado Miners, since gold mining has a rich history in Colorado. That would be pretty good. Now all eyes are on Washington. They've had 2 years to think about this. They better get it right. I'll say that. Alright, now I'll give you some NHL Valk talk. And I'll start with the Detroit Red Wings making a couple moves. They re-signed Michael Rasmussen to a 3-year deal worth $4.38 million. That's $1.46 million a year. And they traded the rights to Jonathan Bernier and a 3rd-round pick to the Hurricanes for Alex Nedeljkovic. Let's start with Rasmussen. This is a good move. Rasmussen had a good year last year. He had 12 points in 40 games. That's fine for a 3rd or 4th liner. He's never going to turn into a top 6 player, but he's young. He's 22 years old. He can turn into a really good third liner. Rasmussen has shown a decent ability to score in the NHL. He's not a good defensive player yet, but that can improve. He's young. He's 22. To sign him to a 3-year deal and to give him less than $1.5 million per year is the right move by the Red Wings. Now to the Nedeljkovic trade. We've seen these young goalies get traded before, and they crash and burn when they're given a starting job. I don't think that Ned is going to do that. Ned has shown early on in his NHL career that he can handle the bright lights. He was great in the playoffs. He had a .920 save percentage, a 2.17 goals against. I was skeptical of him going into the playoffs. He proved me wrong. I think he's going to be a really, really good player in this league for a long time. The Detroit Red Wings, I think, just found their long-term answer in net. You cannot overstate the importance of that for this Red Wings team. Take a look at their goalies last year. Jonathan Bernier isn't a world beater. Thomas Greiss isn't a money goalie. And more to the point, they don't fit the Red Wings' age range. They want to get younger. Look at their core. Philip Roenick is young. Dylan Larkin is young. Adam Ernie's young. Same thing with Zadina, Fabry, Rasmussen. Guys like that. To get a 25-year-old goalie who finished 3rd in Calder Trophy voting last year, who was excellent in the playoffs, who led the NHL last year in GAA and save percentage, is nothing short of incredible. This is a steal by Steve Yzerman. This makes literally no sense for the Hurricanes. I don't get this. They have 3 NHL goalies right now. Jonathan Bernier, Peter Mrazek, and James Reimer. All 3 of those guys are UFAs. So unless you're going to sign a guy like Philip Grubauer, or Tuukka Rask, or Frederick Anderson, or maybe you bring back some of the 3 goalies you already have, this makes no sense. Why would you trade Nedeljkovic? I understand that he was also a pending free agent, but he was a pending RFA. He's earned his contract. The Red Wings just signed him to a 2-year deal worth $6 million. That's more than fair for Ned. It's not like the Hurricanes are in cap hell. According to CapFriendly.com, at this very moment, the Hurricanes have just under $30 million in cap space. I get that they've got to re-sign some guys like Dougie Hamilton, Brock McGinn, and Andrei Svechnikov. But they just made their goalie situation a lot worse. They didn't need to do that. This is a terrible move by the Hurricanes. They just gifted the Red Wings a franchise goalie. I'm really high on Ned now. I'll admit that I was wrong on him. Fantastic move by the Red Wings. Moving on now to a couple Flyers moves. They got out from under Shane Gostisbehere's contract. All they had to give up was a 2nd rounder in 2022 and a 7th rounder in the same year. with their newfound cap room, they added Rasmus Ristolainen from the Sabres. Robert Haig is going to Buffalo, along with a first rounder this year. The NHL draft is actually tonight. And a second rounder in 2023. Let's start with Gostisbehere. He's a frustrating player. He's a great offensive defenseman. In terms of pure offensive talent, Shane Gostisbehere is one of the best defensemen in the NHL. But he is terrible defensively. He's like Travis Hamonic. Hamonic got on the score sheet a lot, but he made a lot of mistakes defensively. The Flyers decided that they couldn't take it anymore. Being a -2 and putting up 20 points in 41 games wasn't enough for the Flyers to justify his $4.5 million cap hit for this coming season and the season after. So they gifted him to the Coyotes. A Coyotes team that actually now has a pretty darn good D-man core. They have Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Jacob Chychrun, and Shane Gostisbehere. That's a really good half of a D-man core. And they've got the cap room necessary to bring back Alex Goligoski. They can make some other moves. At this very moment, they have just over $24 million in cap room, according to CapFriendly.com. Great move by the Coyotes. The thing is, though, for the Flyers, if you're going to move on from Gostisbehere because you don't like his bad defensive play, why would you replace him with Rasmus Ristolainen? Ristolainen and Gostisbehere are very similar players. All offense, no defense. I mean, Gostisbehere's the better offensive player. Ristolainen may be the better defensive player, but the stats don't show it. Rasmus Ristolainen has never had a season where he's been better than a -2. He's a -163 in his career. I understand that he's been a Sabre his whole career, but the numbers don't lie. Ristolainen is not a great defensive defenseman. If you wanted to replace Gostisbehere with a defensive defenseman, that would have made sense. But to replace Gostisbehere with a lesser offensive defenseman, that makes no sense. You just sunk your future. Ristolainen's a good player, put up 18 points in 49 games last year for the Sabres. But you gave up 4 picks and Robert Haig, who may be the best defensive defenseman out of all the D-men who I've mentioned here, to get worse. I'll take Gostisbehere over Ristolainen. They're both on big deals. Ristolainen set to count for $5.4 million against the salary cap this year. And they're defensemen who don't play defense. They're all offense. So it's very easy to compare them. Shane Gostisbehere is better than Rasmus Ristolainen. The Coyotes made out like bandits. The Sabres made out like bandits. What on earth are the Flyers doing? I just don't get this. They got worse. With these 2 trades, they got worse. Their future shot. Their D-man core got worse. Bad job by Chuck Fletcher. Moving on now to the Oilers re-signing Mike Smith to a 2-year deal worth $4.4 million. And this is a great move for the Oilers. Smith had a career renaissance last year. He went 21-6-2 with a .923 save percentage and a 2.31 goals against. He actually got some Vezina Trophy votes for just the second time in his career. The first time was 11-12 when he had that great 38-win season. It's not Smith's fault that the Oilers never do anything in the playoffs. I mean, Smith was good in the playoffs. Was great in Game 2. Was great in Game 4. Played every minute. This is a very reasonable contract for him. I like the Oilers bringing him back. I have no complaints whatsoever about this move. Moving on now to the Rangers, signing Barclay Goodrow to a 6-year extension worth $21.84 million. That's $3.64 million per year. You know what? That's a fair contract for Goodrow. He's worth a little over $3.5 million per year. Goodrow played a big role on the Lightning. He was a tough guy. He was an enforcer. He protected the Stars. And he can score a little bit too. He put up 20 points in 55 games last year for the Lightning. Put up 6 points in 18 playoff games for him. What was the knock on the Rangers last year? That they weren't tough. That they didn't have anyone protecting guys like Panarin and Zibanejad and Strome and Buchnevich and Fox. Goodrow will protect those guys. When you hear that he got just under $22 million, that may make you do a double take, but it's for 6 years. Goodrow's 28, so he'll be good throughout the life of the contract, and it's $3.64 million a year. That's more than fair for him. Good move by the Rangers, and a great job by Chris Drury in addressing his team's biggest need. Moving on now to the Sharks, re-signing Rudolph Balcers to a 2-year extension worth $3.1 million. That's $1.55 million per year. And this is a good move for the Sharks. Balcers is young. He's 24. He's a good point getter. Put up 17 points in 41 games last year. For some reason, I remember hearing about Balcers as he was coming up. Supposedly, he was going to be a really good two-way player. He's been a good offensive player. Defensively, not so much. But you know what? If you want to put Balcers on your third-line left wing for the next 2 years, sure. I have no problem with that at all. There's a role for him in the NHL. Make no mistake about it. This is a good move by the Sharks. They retained a quality young depth option at a very reasonable rate. I'll close this show out by eulogizing Greg Knapp, who died yesterday from injuries that he suffered while cycling on Saturday. He was just 58 years old. Greg Knapp was a really, really good offensive mind. Knew the game very well. Knew how to utilize his personnel. He would have been invaluable to Zach Wilson. Knapp started coaching full-time in 1995. He was an offensive quality control coach for the 49ers. He worked his way up to become offensive coordinator of the Niners in 2001. With Knapp at the helm from 2001 to 2003, the Niners offense finished in the top 8 in terms of total yards each year. They made the playoffs in 01 and 02. He helped guys like Garrison Hurst and Kevin Barlow have big years. Knapp was the perfect fit for those Niners teams. He then went to the Falcons for the next 3 years. And he was really the architect of those incredibly fun Falcons offenses that were led by Michael Vick in the mid-2000s. In 2002, Vick obviously showed what he could do, but he got hurt the year after. Knapp got it through Vick's head that he needed to protect himself, had him slide more, and because of that, Michael Vick turned into one of the best dual-threat quarterbacks in NFL history. In 2004, the Falcons won the NFC South. They got the second bye. They destroyed the Rams in the divisional round, but then lost to the top-seeded Eagles in the NFC Conference Championship game. I'd be remiss, though, if I didn't mention what Knapp did for Warwick Dunn. Under Knapp, Dunn had 3 straight seasons where he had over 1,100 rushing yards. He was thought of before that as a decent running back, but certainly not great. Knapp turned Dunn into a great running back. We don't remember how potent that running attack was with Vick and Dunn. Like I said, those were incredibly fun teams. Knapp received some good news and bad news after the 2006 season. The good news was that when Bobby Petrino took over as Falcons head coach, he brought in his own offensive coordinator, Hugh Jackson. So Knapp didn't have to suffer through that dismal 2007 season. The bad news is that Knapp went to the Oakland Raiders, a team that was probably in a worse position than the Falcons because with the first overall pick in the 2007 NFL Draft, the Raiders took one of the biggest busts in NFL history out of LSU, Jamarcus Russell. Knapp received a lot of blame for not developing Russell, but there was no developing Russell. He just didn't have the desire to be great. He did develop Justin Fargas, though. Fargas had his 2 best years in the NFL under Knapp in 2007 and 2008. In 2009, Knapp was the offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks. But by then it was pretty evident that Matt Hasselbeck was at the end of the line. He went back to the Raiders in 2012 as their offensive coordinator. led Carson Palmer to a really good season. Darren McFadden was solid, but much like his first Raiders tenure, it didn't end well. Knapp then became a quarterbacks coach, and he was a good one. In 2010, he led Matt Schaub to a really good season for the Texans. He was the quarterbacks coach for the Broncos in 2013 when Peyton Manning had that all-time season. He was with the Falcons for the last 3 seasons. He helped prolong Matt Ryan's career. It'll be interesting to see what Ryan does now. I think Arthur Smith will help him, but it wouldn't surprise me if Ryan took a step back. No Greg Knapp, no Julio Jones. Like I said, if you're going to blow things up, do it all the way. Don't keep Matt Ryan. If you're going to get rid of Jones and get rid of the front office and get rid of the coaching staff, get rid of everyone. I feel sorry for Matt Ryan. It's going to be tough sledding in Atlanta. Knapp was supposed to be the passing game specialist for the Jets this year. God only knows what a passing game specialist does, but Zach Wilson would have benefited from having someone with Knapp's experience at his disposal. I mean, you take a look at that Jets offensive staff, it doesn't have a lot of experience. Yes, John Benton has been in the NFL for a really long time, but Mike LaFleur really hasn't. Rob Calabrese really hasn't. Taylor Embry really hasn't. Miles Austin hasn't as a coach. Ron Middleton really hasn't. Jake Moreland really hasn't. That offensive staff really could have used Knapp. He leaves behind a wife and 3 daughters. I know that a GoFundMe has been set up for their benefit. From the bottom of my heart, may he rest in peace. New York Yankees show comes your way Monday night. Regular episodes of the Jacob Valk Show come your way every weekday afternoon. Friday's show is going to be solely dedicated to the MLB trade deadline. Until next time, I am Jacob Valk, and if you disagree with me, you're wrong.